My new book is The Knowledge Wars. It's a book about the tension that's arisen with science and society and trying to talk to people in the broader society. It's not a book for scientists. It's a book for people who don't do science or who may not even like science very much. But I make the point that science was really started by people who are very broad, Renaissance types, if you like. And I think science has to some extent dropped out of the lexicon for intelligent and well-educated human beings. We all use the products of science, but sometimes we're even quite hostile to science, even though we benefit so much from it. I think that's dangerous, and it's dangerous having discussions and elections around issues like anthropogenic climate change, vaccination and so forth, when people are basically very poorly informed. So I'm not trying to tell people what to think, though I tell people what I think. Obviously, I think anthropogenic climate change is dangerous. I think medical science is good. Science in general is a good idea, though it's not without its flaws. But I'm suggesting to people how they can look at these sorts of things for themselves. And there's even a section at the back, there's 4 appendices, sort of suggesting how you can look at science using online sources. How do we get people who are not in science to be passionate about science, particularly areas like global health? Global health is probably one area where you can get people interested, but you have to get them to think outside their normal context. The best way to get any science issue across is to use visual media. The problem, though, is that with issues like global health, we're so accustomed to seeing horrific situations portrayed on television in various contexts, all sorts of different contexts, that there's a sort of weariness or exhaustion in society. So to get people to engage with it intellectually is a totally different problem. I'm not sure how we get around it, but it's something we're all guilty of. There's a chapter in the book on invented narrative and deliberate ignorance. And quite frankly, we all practice both those. We practice deliberate ignorance because we can't. No matter how good and how well-meaning we are, we simply cannot deal with all the issues that really need addressing. And so we tend to tune a lot of them out, so we can focus on 1 or 2, or in some cases we tune them all out. The question about the Sustainable Development Goals and the broader community is, firstly, how do you even make people aware of them? I mean, do you get any help from the print media? Probably very little, because Sustainable Development Goals can often cut across economic goals. And newspapers are all in big trouble. They've lost a lot of their advertising. And what advertising they got may well come from industries, say, like the fossil fuel industries. Now, the goals of the fossil fuel industry are not really in accord with those of sustainable development, as we all understand. And so there's a big problem. How do you communicate? I think communication is the big issue, and how do we intrigue? There are various ways of doing it, through movies and so forth, and through video means. I think we've got to use online resources to the best of our abilities, and particularly for younger people, and this is largely a younger group as I understand it, I think you're much more sophisticated than people of my generation in using online media. If I were setting out now, I would not be writing books. I'd be trying to work out how to develop an effective blog or to get effective communication working that way. All of us, though, can tweet interesting articles, interesting URLs. We can put stuff up on YouTube if we've got good visual stuff, and we can just do whatever we can. The Global Ideas Forum is a very good idea, and it's great to get young professionals and young interested parties from a diversity of areas talking about these common goals. And then the question is action. How do you get action, and how do you get awareness? And I could ask you, what interest have you had from the conventional, say, broadcast media? Have any of the television stations been willing to engage? Has radio been willing to engage? And I think I suspect the answer is it's been very difficult for you. It's very difficult for them to lift their game beyond entertainment and prejudice, quite frankly, which is what most of these talkback radio things are about, is commonly held views, common sense, but unfortunately common sense and prejudice are often the same thing. So I think it's this issue of how do we take this forward. I think basically strong action, well-motivated action is a great way to go. But getting broader awareness is very difficult. We're living in an era where collaboration is absolutely central to just about everything we do. In my own area of medical science, it used to be, when I first started out, that I knew everything going on in my area of research. Now when we write a scientific paper, instead of having 3 authors who know all about it, we've got 20 authors. And they represent a number of different areas and disciplines, from chemistry, physics, mathematics, medical science, and none of us fully understand what any of the others are doing, quite frankly. So everything is working on trust and confidence and collaboration, and that's enormously powerful. The difficulty, though, is getting that going in the public policy area, especially when you've got powerful vested interests who are opposing you and have a lot of money. So somehow or other you've got to sneak around that. You've got to use, I think, the new online media is one way of doing that. And any effort to restrict that we should resist with every possible means. But it's not enough, especially with older people. Younger people are engaging much more with that. The real barrier at the moment is people of my generation and the generation before, who are extremely conservative often, and quite frankly, very self-serving. I hope that's true, that the younger generation are going to create change. I think that you have to. My generation and those other generations are leaving you enormous problems. We've given enormous advantages in some sense in terms of health, improved health, and basically opportunity in many senses. But those opportunities have come with costs that have not been met and are being put off into the future. And somehow we have to work out how we start paying those costs now, taking some of that burden, and changing values. And I think really a lot of it is to do with changing what people really value. And we're seeing some of that. I mean, a young male Australian of my generation, their primary objective would be to get a motor car. I don't think that's any longer true for a lot of people. I think their primary objective is to pay their cell phone bills. And so that's kind of better in a way. And I think we can change what people value, but we have to put those possibilities out there to people who are often not terribly accustomed to engaging with something beyond shopping and entertainment.